Hey guys, this is Will Roundtree, your FICO certified credit specialist, credit mastery instructor for the J. Morrison Academy, author of 2 books, Credit is King, as well as Full-Time CEO, The Shit They Don't Tell You. But more importantly, I want to take you on this journey about financial literacy, the importance of credit, how to understand credit, and how to get to that money. Welcome to the Wealth Files Podcast. Peace, family. Will Roundtree here with the Wealth Files today. 2-time author, first book, Credit is King. Second book, Full-Time CEO, The Shit They Don't Tell You. Look, that book is really just a journey of my 15-year journey of being an entrepreneur, being that full-time CEO. And I'm talking about the good, the bad, the unglamorized side of business, because I'm telling you, it's not all good in business. It's not all peaches and cream. It's not, the Instagram, posts that everybody see. It's a lot of the shit that they don't tell you. I talk a lot in the book about, the mishap in investments, the loss of jobs, the loss of friends, and just being able to know how to adapt. And so this show today is very important to me because that's what we're going to talk about today, just being able to adapt. And so our original guest who was scheduled to come on today's show, unfortunately couldn't make it. And so what we decided to do is actually just make this show about, just me kind of talking about my story and even just being able to adapt, because a lot of times I talk to so many people that try going into business, that try out entrepreneurship, and literally a week in, they're giving up. And so I want to ask you, what do you do when things don't go your way in business? What do you do when things don't go your way in life? Do you just give up? Do you just cave? Do you just, throw your hands up and say, I can't take this anymore? And so you have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to call that audible. And that's what we did today is we called the audible. Excuse me. We pivoted. We literally changed the entire structure for today's podcast because understand, my time is extremely valuable, just like your time is valuable. So I hope that you're valuing your time. And trust me, I'm not taking your time for granted that you're going to take out to even watch and listen to this podcast, which is why I'm still delivering today's show. So whether every single guest showed up on every single episode or nobody, I'm going to still deliver a show. If you got to see me on every single episode, that's what we're going to do. But more importantly, it's just about, like I said, being able to adapt to change. And is as simple as that sound, trust me, it's not easy to do. They said the definition of easy means it's also easy not to do. What do I mean by that? It's easy it's easy to say, you know what, my guest didn't show up. I'm going to pack it in and go back home. It's easy to say, you know what, I'm not feeling good. I don't feel like recording today. It's easy to say my back hurt. I don't want to go to the gym. It's easy to say, you know what, whatever excuse you're going to come up with. And so the thing about getting to that next level is that you have to work your ass off. The one of the dopest words that I learned about a long time ago is called extraordinary. And the word extra in layman's terms just means just a little bit more, meaning you can be ordinary, but I want to be extraordinary, which means I just have to put in a little bit more work than the average person. Because I'm telling you, it doesn't take much more to be great. Yes, a lot of us who are good out here, but I want to be great. I want to become and create a level of excellence. I want to create a legacy. And all you have to do is a little bit extra. It reminds me of a time when I first went for one of my sales jobs, when I first moved to Las Vegas. And I remember sitting across from the table with the hiring manager. And he said, you know what, Will? I'm not sure why I should hire you because you don't really fit the mold of a typical salesperson. And I wanted to say why, because I'm not standing on a desk doing backflips and doing fist pumps. And so he was just like, why should I give you this job? And so I looked him in his eyes and I said, because I'm going to outwork every single body in this office. Had very little sales experience. This was in 2008. And so he ended up giving me the job. I was in a sales class of about 17. I was the only one left after about 4 months. And I was the top salesperson in that entire company. At one point, hit some of the top sales metrics within the division, even within the entire company, nationally. And I did all of this because I outworked everyone. It wasn't that I was the greatest talent. See, a lot of times talent can get you in the door, but it can't keep you. Think about all of the talented individuals, at the basketball courts who never made the NBA. Think about all of the talented people who have great ideas, but never got their inventions off the ground or never got their businesses started or whatever because they didn't have the work ethic. See, I tell people, I'm going to outwork you. So you may be stronger than me. You may have more talent than me, all that stuff. And yeah, everything that I try doesn't work, but the average person would never know that because, as I always share with people, the only time people know that we failed at something is because we broadcast it. I was joking earlier that if I'm walking down the street and I fail, people going to think I'm doing that for a movie because I'm going to make everything I do look like a win, whether I fail or not. And that's the mindset and attitude that we have to have in business. And so people often ask me, Will, how'd you get that mindset? How did you get to that point where failure is not an option? And then, it just kind of took me back to, my childhood. For those who may not know, I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And anyone who knows anything about the Midwest, it's a different place. Blue collar area, the warehousing industry was pretty much, if you got a job in a warehouse, you were like the ish. And so, but the one thing about the Midwest that's different than the West Coast, that's different than the South, especially now, and that's different than the East Coast, is that the Midwest, we really didn't have that representation. We really didn't have those, big time role models and moguls to look up to. I talked about in another episode that a lot of our role models were the D-boys and the dope dealers and all of that stuff because they drove the flashy cars. They had all of the women. They had the fly outfits and all of that stuff. And so now I never necessarily want to aspire to be them. I just aspired to have the stuff that they had. So it was more the lifestyle that I wanted because I knew what the alternative was. Everybody on my block that I grew up with to this day is either dead or in jail. And so I knew I never wanted that lifestyle. I knew I never wanted that life. I just wanted the style within the life that they created. And so at the age of 13, because of all of the gang violence and everything going on within the neighborhood I grew up in, my parents actually moved me to Mississippi. And so, but I lived in the most rural part, in Mississippi, a small town called Kosciuszko, Mississippi. And I grew up, for 3 years living in Mississippi, lived on a farm of over 120 plus acres where there were only 3 homes. My grandparents raised all their own crops, their food and all of that. And the town was so small, the only thing that was there was a Walmart, a McDonald's, and a KFC. And so I share this story with you is because I had no representation my entire childhood of what success looked like. There was no black role models that I could look to besides on television, besides the rappers and, the ball players. But I knew I wasn't going to be 6 feet. So I got rid of my hoop dreams very, very quickly. I tried rapping. That definitely wasn't me. I don't have rhythm. Everybody in my family and friends know I can't even dance. I think I got 2 left feet. And so I knew it was something else that I had to find, my purpose, find what I was going to be good at. And so after I graduated, and just to kind of paint the picture of what Kosciuszko was like, the first high school I went to was a small high school that went from 6th grade to 12th grade, and it maybe been 300-400 students there, and it was a predominantly all black school. I think it maybe have been 2 white kids that went to the entire school. The school was so small and the town was so rural that they still believed in paddling, or for those who don't know what that means, they still whooped you in school. Okay. And so that was my sophomore year. After my sophomore year, my parents ended up moving to Mississippi because that's originally where my dad is from, and started going to a school as they call uptown, a little bit more modern, wasn't the dirt roads. And so went to a school, Kosciuszko High School, which was I was actually the second graduating class of that entire school because they had just built a brand new school, graduated in 1997. But it was an extreme culture shock because the racism was so rampant. I mean, my prom was segregated. That's right. In 1997, my prom was segregated. I can remember that, this white girl had, called herself having a crush on me. And I can remember her giving me her phone number and saying, hey, if you call my house, which I didn't, if you call my house and my mother answers the phone, hang up because she doesn't like black guys. And so that just kind of paints the picture and lets you know like what I was up against. There was no black, there were no black heroes that I could look up to. There were no black doctors in town, no black attorneys, no black owned businesses that I could think of or that I could remember. And so after I graduated, actually, I ended up the day of my graduation. I remember the day to this day, May 25th, 1997, moved back to Milwaukee, literally the same day of the graduation. And, just kind of trying to find myself in life and, ended up going to school, started going to, a technical college, wanted to go to school for computer engineering. I don't even know why I picked it. I think, computers were just kind of bursting on the scene and, coding and all of this stuff. But I was doing what people told me what they thought I would be good at. I didn't really have a passion for that. And so I can remember being in school and I was a fairly, as I would say, a straight A student all through high school. I think school came so easy for me that I got bored. And so when I went and decided to go to college, was there for, a semester or so. And for those who know my story about, being a college dropout, I can remember being in my economics class, but they're not really teaching us about money. They're not teaching us about finances. They're teaching us how much should a loaf of bread cost in today's economy? I need to know how to get the money so I can buy the loaf of bread and I can budget and figure everything else out from there. And so I can remember being in class and just saying, I'm not learning anything that's going to be conducive to what I want to do or what I aspire to be. And I can remember, just kind of self-reflecting in that class. And I'm like, I want to be wealthy. And it's like, I honestly don't know where that came from. Maybe it was the imagery from my childhood. And I started to think like, why is it in our families and households we're scared to talk about money? Why is it in our families and households it's a taboo to talk about wanting to become wealthy? We'll brag on our famous entertainers, but we're not bragging on our own family members who's trying to create wealth. We'll talk about somebody else having riches, but we're not trying to build our own. I have this thing that I'm not trying to help somebody else create their wealth. I'm trying to focus on me and my family. And what I mean by that is that, yeah, trust me, I love to go to a good concert, but I'm not going to help them become richer because I'm trying to focus and pour into myself. And when I get to the position where I feel uncomfortable enough, then I'll go and attend those concerts. And so that was kind of always my mindset as I was growing up. Again, because I had a different aspiration growing up because I got tired of not seeing anybody that looked like me. And so I wanted to become the inspiration for the little black kings and queens in my neighborhood, in my family, in my circle, in my community, in my city, and in my state. And so I wanted to be a representation of what I wish I would have seen growing up. I want to be the representation for my son, be the representation for my daughter, be the representation for my nieces and nephews and all of that. And so that's why I just kind of took a sacrifice to say, you know what? I'll be the test dummy, no pun intended. I'll be the guinea pig. I'll go out and fail. I'll go out and make the investment. I'll go out and work on myself because I want to be able to come back and pour back into my people. And so fast forward now, that's how we got here to the Wealth Files, how we created this podcast. And this is just a smidget of, one of the many things that I want to be able to do and lend my voice, and hopefully this, helps you out and lands on a good ear. So so we're gonna freestyle here. We got a couple questions, and I'm just gonna open up and give you guys, Will Roundtree in my rawest form, and just continue to tell my story, and hopefully this inspires someone, because yes, we had to pivot. I had to get my Peyton Manning on today and call the audible. All
right, so here we go. Wealth Files, first question for you, Will. What does representation mean to you?
So what does representation mean to me? It means being able to identify with someone. It means for me to be a pawn in someone else's life. And when I say pawn, not meaning that I'm being used, but to be utilized because something that really stood out to me is that, for those who know, I have a YouTube channel, Mr. Will Roundtree. So if you have not done so, please go and subscribe. Got a lot of great content on there. And one of the very first videos I've ever shot, how to get the perfect credit score. And I had that video on YouTube less than 2 years, and we've already surpassed and eclipsed over 1 million views. And I can remember someone sending me a comment and saying, that is incredible, because you don't see that often unless it's someone who's a rapper or an athlete, or it's some buffoonery shit that people are posting on the internet. And so I was proud of that I was able to create that representation, that we can go out here and be positive. We can go out here and be inspirational. We can go out here and attempt to create influence amongst our peers, amongst people who look up to us, or who I hope that may look up to us, and just creating a positive representation in a world full of negativity. Because every time you turn on the television, whether it's the news or just media, it's negativity. Anytime you hop in on the internet, you're seeing or reading negativity, or even just a negative imagery that they're creating amongst of Black men. And so I want to be able to just show a positive representation of a Black man who went out and literally created something from nothing, with just literally a vision and a will to not quit, and just being consistently consistent. And no pun intended with the word will to not quit.
So how does being an entrepreneur fit into you being a representation for your community?
So I would say that, one, because again, growing up, we really didn't see a lot of Black entrepreneurs. And that was the biggest thing. Again, my representation when I was growing up were the D-boys in the streets, the pimps. Milwaukee was known for a pimp culture, very strong pimp culture. And so even as I grew and got into my early 20s, then we started to see, more imagery of Black entrepreneurship from the Puffs and the Jay-Z's and all of that. But they were not touchable back then because, of course, we didn't have social media. And so for me to be able to create representation in entrepreneurship is that I want people to know that it's okay to have a different mindset, because to be an entrepreneur, you got to have a different mindset. If college is not your thing, that's okay. College was not for me. And trust me, I was expected to go to college by a lot of my family members. I almost sometimes felt like the black sheep because I was one of the few that dropped out of college, and they thought I was going to go on to be an architect or something what they deemed to be great in their eyes. But I never wanted somebody else's narrative to be my narrative. So I created my own narrative. And so my narrative was always entrepreneurship. I can remember in 2003, when I lost my job and, I kind of stumbled into entrepreneurship, and, I got laughed at all the time, but I always knew what the bigger picture was. And I wanted to, as I fast forward now, which is why I wrote the book, Full-Time CEO, The Shit They Don't Tell You, because there is really no representation of entrepreneurship about the unglamorized side of it. And so I wanted to literally put all my vulnerabilities, all my failures, my successes, and not just talk about the good stuff in business, because it's more bad than good, and so, but, I think representation in entrepreneurship was extremely important for what I wanted to portray, because a lot of times people feel that your only way out of, out of a lot of the communities that we come from is either, entertainment, sports, You have to go to college and get, all these fancy degrees and all of that. But no, like you literally can create your own path, your own destiny. But it all literally starts with the dream. It all starts with having a vision. And it has you have to have a will to not quit, because it's very easy to quit no matter what space or industry or, what lane you're trying to drive your goals in. It's very important to just stay in the game.
What are some examples of representation that you grew up with?
Well, I'll talk about the positive ones first. I would say one, it starts with my parents. Believe it or not, my parents were entrepreneurs. I didn't know it at the time. I can remember my mother sometimes working 2 jobs. My dad, was an iron worker, but he was also an entrepreneur. He owned real estate. And so they did the best to their ability, because I'm sure that maybe they not have had the best of representation. But then as I started to think about it, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Both of my grandfathers were entrepreneurs. My mother's father was, I think he didn't get past a 3rd grade education. Excuse me. But at one point, he had over 45 homes he owned in the city of Milwaukee, owned a car wash. And we're talking about someone who doesn't even have a 5th grade education, who created a real estate portfolio that in today's net worth will probably be worth about $5-6 million. And so, and then my dad's father, who was a carpenter, the town carpenter in Mississippi, in the town where I said I grew up in for a few years, and, was able to amass and create wealth for our family, because we still own over 100+ acres of land in that town. And so yeah, those were probably the positive images that were subconsciously, fed to me, because I can remember growing up as a child in the summer, I worked with both of my grandfathers. I would, in Milwaukee, I started working with my grandfather at the age of 11, 12. Then when I moved to Mississippi, in the summertime when I wasn't in school, I would work with my grandfather working on homes and, and all these things. So I had the positive imagery subconsciously. I just didn't know it at that time. Now, of course, they never got to the amount of success that, the negative images that, I saw growing up in Milwaukee, the D boys with the fancy cars and the clothes and the jewelry and all of that stuff. So, but I'm just glad that I had an opportunity to just be around some dope kings. My mom, the queen, who just always made sure to keep me focused and, creating those imageries and them just sacrificing everything that they sacrifice in order for me to be where I am today. And I would say the biggest thing I took from all of that is work ethic. And like I tell people, it's very few people who is going to outwork me. And, I believe that's one of the things I can attribute to why I've been able to amass success in anything that I did. Whether it was on the job, I'm going to outwork you. If it was, when I was playing basketball, you may score more points than me, but you're not gonna have your season high on me, because I'm gonna play defense and all that good stuff. So yeah, so definitely the work ethic and the imagery was my family.
Why is Black representation important to your community?
That's extremely important because a couple different things or a couple reasons. For one, we have to look at it. Even in 2020, you could turn on the news any given time of the day, and you're going to see negative imagery of Black men. We're touted as being lazy. We're touted as being brute, over-sexualized individuals who want to rob, steal, and kill and take all the white women. And that's so not true. It's actually a lot of us who are out here who trying to do some dope shit. We're creative. Yes, we're magical beings. We are individuals who create something out of nothing. We made hustling sound cool. we created words like swag that people are using in prime time. And so I say all of that to say that, we've been able to create something out of survival that we basically the deck has been stacked against us all of our lives. I mean, from the time we're born, we're dealing with shit. From the time we're born, a lot of us are born into poverty. A lot of us are born into situations where it should be more movies made about how we made it out, because it's always interesting. And even, far beyond my level, where we're seeing, more Black entrepreneurs. And when I talk about entrepreneurship, yes, I'm talking about the rappers. All of those are all entrepreneurs, literally, who've created something literally out of nothing, all from their story and their journey. And so that's why I relish in telling my story so often. That's why when I talk to other entrepreneurs, I say, tell your story. And I talk about your failures, embrace your experiences, because all of those things is so vital. But then also letting people know, when it comes to Black excellence, is what I like to call it, it's so much negative shit that they portray about us. We need to start having more forums to let people know it's a lot of us out here doing some dope shit, and giving back and trying to, raise families, and like we're juggling, and we still got to go out here in these streets and survive. Whether it's police brutality, whether it's, other people, just all types of stuff. And so, like, it's so important that we have these, these representations of Black excellence, because, even though it's more accessible today for us to see and touch and even talk to, whether it's through social media, successful Black individuals, a lot of us still don't believe that we can be in that seat. And so it's important that we continue to push the narrative, which is why, over the past few years, I've been extremely vocal in really just telling my story more. Because a lot of times people think, oh, they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth, or they were lucky, or right place and right time, or, their parents had money. And I tell people all the time, look, I didn't have a rich Uncle Phil from Beverly Hills. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, lived in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. My prom was segregated. I mean, my hand-me-down clothes came from my parents. But because of just just a drop of a dream that I had created and sparked a vision in me that made me want to go out there and just aspire for more, for me to be able to go back and reach back and grab as many of us, as possible. But yeah, Black representation is extremely important in our community. And when I say that, no disrespect to any other communities, but, we don't have the luxury of, we don't have the luxury of the positivity of excellence. A lot of the imagery that they like to showcase on especially us Black men is we're, like I talked about, thugs, we're, and so, like, I just want to be able to let people know, no matter what your circumstance is, no matter where you come from, no matter what your mistakes were. I get a lot of people who are convicted felons who my story resonates with them because, they understand that don't let that one scenario situation define who you are. Literally every single day you have an opportunity to create a different narrative of yourself, but you just have to be consistent with it. And so, but yeah, that's why I feel it's extremely important for us to create our own narrative of what Black excellence is. And I'm going to do everything in my power to continue to create that imagery in my community, in my household, and within my family.
What advice would you give somebody who's trying to break the cycle, as you have? You come from turbulent, adverse, a lot of adversity in your life. What advice would you give somebody who may be coming from the same situation as yourself? What would you tell them to get out of a certain situation, or to grow and advance in life?
So the biggest thing is like, the answer is in layers. I think the first thing is really just taking an inventory of what it is you want out of life. And the reason it starts with that. And so it's interesting. I was having a discussion with someone who I coach, and they were like, Will, I'm trying to get my business to the next level. How do I do that? And I'm like, well, it's not a how-to. There's no magical pill or magical moment or magical aha that I can give you that's going to help you go to that next level in business and life or whatever. It really starts with you working on you. And so how we get ourselves in those situations, it really starts with us taking an inventory of who we are. And it's easy, or as cliche as that sound, the reason that's important because a person has to want it. And what I mean by that is that I talk to people every single day from all across the country, literally all across the world. And it's interesting that people talk themselves out of success, meaning like I can speak with someone and they'll tell me something like, man, I want to do this, but, I got X, Y, and Z going on and this and that and third, and I don't have no time. I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't deal with excuses. And so you're going to have to figure that shit out, and prioritize and rearrange anything that you have going on if you are trying to get to this. And so going back to what that advice would be, I always tell everybody, you want to work harder on yourself than you do on your business. You want to work harder on yourself than you do on your craft, on your talent. And that's why I always tell people that the talent can only open the door. I have a good friend of mine who's an NBA agent. And, he has, several of his players who get drafted, and I'm fortunate enough to, get a chance to meet some of them and, work with them and help them out, on the finance and all of that side. And I remember one of them telling me, I was like, yo, congrats, you made it to the league, this, that, and the third. And it was like, Will, you know what? Getting in the league is literally just the start. Now I have to stay. And so, and it made me think about it like, yeah, like we see them going to the league and we think they made it. I'm like, no. Because the average span for NBA or NFL players like 2 to 4 years. So it's just as much work staying there. And to be able to do that, you have to work on self, which is why LeBron is still breaking careers 17 years or however long he's been in the NBA, because he invests and works on himself, taking care of his body, taking care of his mind, surrounding himself with, individuals and people who have his best interests, not who just have interest for themselves and trying to get his interests. And so it literally starts with self. And, that may not be the ideal answer that people want to hear, because everybody's looking for that one magical thing that's going to get them to that next level. But it really is that simple. But it all starts with discipline. It all starts with really, really wanting it. Like, I love one of the things that Eric Thomas talked about, like, and I'm paraphrasing, when you want success as bad as you need to breathe, you'll become successful. I don't care what it is, you will figure it out. And, we were talking offline here, like in business and in entrepreneurship, like there is no guide. When you come from corporate America, you're used to knowing what your job description is. You have to do 30, 50 phone calls in an hour. You have to file X amount of papers. You got to meet with X amount of clients within an hour. When you start your own business, you really don't have a blueprint or a game plan. You really just winging it and figuring it out every day. And then when things don't go the way we expect it to go, how do you deal with that? And the only way to be able to adapt and pivot or call that audible like we had to do today is knowing and being secure within yourself and saying, you know what? Okay, I can make this decision. I can deal with this differently. It's not a failure. And so, but that all starts with self. And there's a certain level of confidence you have to have. Again, I heard something that said, I'm so confident if I play the lottery, I'm expecting to win. And so that's literally how I live life and look at business. Like, no matter what I touch, I'm expecting for it to be success. Now, success doesn't always mean monetary. Success could be just in the form of I was able to figure out how to maneuver within the realm of that new venture or that new business or that new journey. And so yeah, but I mean, it literally just starts with self and all that good stuff. And so I can keep talking about that forever.
What is your goal for 2020?
Man, I don't know if we have enough time to. I have so many, but one of the biggest things that I really wanted to focus on, and my goal, like I never set a goal for the year. I set lifetime goals. And I think like that primarily because a lot of times I think we wait for a starting point to set a goal. Like I stopped making New Year's resolutions 15 years ago. Like I don't have to wait till January to be great. I'm going to start to be great today. And if I don't succeed at what that is, guess what? I got a chance to start over tomorrow. And so, but to answer the question, like one of my biggest goals that I really, really, really wanted to focus on was my health. And they talk about health is wealth. And it's a cute, catchy slogan, but I don't really think people know what that means. And what I mean by that is that when you are in a space where you're trying to create a legacy and build an empire and, all that cool terminology we use, like your health is vitally important because you will sacrifice your health trying to create wealth. And then a few years later, we look up and we're sick, and then you will spend every single dime trying to get your health back. And so what I wanted to do was to be able to create a healthy lifestyle. I remember looking at a picture of one of my videos I had shot like in 2015, and I was so disgusted. I'm like, how'd I let myself get that damn big? And so I told myself from then on, like, I want to be healthy. I want to be able to, a lot of times when I'm traveling, I don't get to sleep for 2 days, but I need to be able to have the stamina to still be able to go out there and perform and be just as sharp to where you wouldn't know whether I slept from 2 days ago or if I got 10 hours of sleep. And so understanding that my wealth was extremely important to me, getting in the gym, eating right, and just being able to sustain, because there's a lifestyle that comes with, being an entrepreneur. Whether your travel schedule is as rigorous as mine, you still have to have a certain level of stamina because in business, there is no 9 to 5, If somebody flew into town and they say, hey, Will, I want to pay for your time. Can I sit down with you? And it's at 10:30 at night. We're going to go meet at 10:30 at night if it's going to be beneficial for them to help them get to their next goal. And that's the only time they can meet. And so I have to be in a position to where I'm not sluggish. My energy isn't off. I mean, late night, early flights. A lot of times when I'm flying out east, I have to take a 6 a.m. flight or a 5 a.m. flight. Now, to be able to catch a 5 and 6 a.m. flight, I have to be up at 2:30 in the morning. Because anybody who know me know I'm anal about time. I get to the airport an hour, 2 hours ahead of time, because then I can get to the airport and get some work done. So now I'm maximizing my time. And so just understanding that my health was extremely important. Of course, I have my financial goals. And then a lot of my goals also consist of helping other people create what it is they want to be able to do. I have this thing where it says, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll be blessed beyond measures. And so my goal literally is to help create other millionaires, to be able to help other people create and go after their goals and go after their dreams. And so, because I know if I help enough people do that, no matter how much money I choose to make, that will come. And so I mean, I really don't just have one targeted, pinpointed goal. It's really a multitude of things. But, this year, 2020 is the year of me giving back. And I really want to do as much as I can, because a lot of times people think giving back is actually giving people money. And that doesn't solve anything. I'd rather give people opportunities or help them create opportunities to now they can create legacy for themselves and all of that stuff. So those are a lot of what my goals are. But definitely health is probably my biggest, most major goal is being healthy. Because, man, when I'm 60, I still want to look good.
Absolutely. So you give a lot to the community. You give a lot of your time, stuff that you're not paid for a lot of the time, most of the time. You go and you're just there and you contribute on a major level. What do you actually get out of that when you're not looking for anything? um, as far as like some type of return on what you're investing, as far as like your time? I mean, what do you get out of all of it, since you give up a lot of your time for free?
No, definitely. So I think I kind of touched on it a little bit on the prior, is that just being able to help enough people get what they want, and it'll come back. And so I think because we live in a society where we're looking for a tangible return every single time. And so, but I can remember when I was younger, and again, not necessarily having the successful people who we saw successful coming to say, hey, Will, let me show you how I got here. And we used to always hear the same story: go to school, get good grades. I'm like, look, I know that shit don't work for everybody, because I know a lot of people with master degrees who broke. I know a lot of people with PhDs who broke. And so you can't tell me that that works for everybody. And when I say broke, I mean, yeah, they may be living, but they're not living in a condition or what I want to be in a position of. And so I knew it was more than that. And so I always told myself, if I ever got to a position to where I can help others, I want to be able to give my time, which I feel is more valuable than giving a check, because I can give you $100 or $1,000 and it'll be gone that day. But if I invest my time with you to show you how to not only get the $1,000, but now to multiply it 10x, you'll always remember that. And so that's really what I wanted to do, is to be able to just offer my time and to really just help people to create an opportunity for themselves. So hopefully you guys learned something here. Like I said, I just wanted to be able to kind of talk about my story, just relish a little bit about who Will Roundtree is, because I believe that a lot of times that we take for granted that our story is how we got to the places and positions where we are. And people want to know that you're human. And so I just wanted to be able to show that. Plus, we had to pivot because my guest didn't show up, and I need to be able to maximize the time that we are paying for today. So family, I appreciate y'all rocking out with me on today's Wealth Files. My name is Will Roundtree. Make sure y'all go out and pick up these 2 books, Full-Time CEO, The Shit They Don't Tell You, as well as Credit is King. Again, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube. You can catch me on all the podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, all that good stuff. I'm still learning the links myself. Again, continue to support your local Black-owned businesses, and I'll see you guys all at the top. Peace. Thank you for tuning in to the Wealth Files podcast. My name is Will Roundtree. Yo, make sure that you subscribe to me on YouTube at Mr. Will Roundtree. And also, you can follow me on all the top podcast sites, Google, Anchor, Apple, as well as Spotify. And again, family, I appreciate you going on this journey with me, and I'll see you all at the top.